Hey, this is Zero at ReviewZoneHD, and yes, I did get the same guy twice right at the beginning of the video. Those two ladder kills, in my opinion, were pretty funny. I definitely did not want to have to climb the ladder and go up on the roof to fight those guys. But I've still been playing some Dark Souls 2 this week. The game has officially been out for 1 week. I've dropped 60 hours into it so far, and I had a few questions about my character build in that second video that I posted a couple days ago. And I said, what the heck, I'll do one more video for you guys and talk a little bit about my final build for my level 80 Sorcerer. And of course the video wouldn't be entertaining if I didn't show you guys some PvP, show a little of my gear, my stats, and just talk about my thought process on this build. And I was wrong about something that I said in the last video. Flame Storm isn't the best thing since sliced bread. That other fireball spell that you see me use a little bit in this video, the one that I killed the guy on the ladder with, that spawns on the player and blows them up, might be better than Firestorm because of the amount of damage that it does. But first, here's an example of a more traditional Sorcerer build using Soul Arrows, which the Soul Vortex and the Soul Shower are both really useful spells for PvP. If you can get your intellect high enough to where they hit hard, they could actually put some people down. I died today against somebody spamming Soul Vortex, so that's not a horrible choice by any means. But for me personally, I don't like using Soul Arrows for PvP because they're really easy to avoid, and if someone rolls up to you and gets in close, they're just going to mess you up, which is why I like the Pyro magic so much more. Yes, you can still roll up to me with the Pyro build and mess me up, but it's sort of a gamble because I could have Flame Combustion or Firestorm waiting on you. Now, one disadvantage with Firestorm is that it's really random with where the fire pillars hit. Now, if you can get somebody in a corner or in a narrow area, then you can kind of confine the fire pillars into that little area. But if it's in a more open room, and somebody can roll on top of you and they may be able to get a few hits in while you're crouched down on the ground recovering from the cast because the flame pillars might miss them. So you kind of roll the dice on trying to judge in time what the other person's going to do when you try to cast that. But moving on, let's take a look at my build. I did use the Soul Vessel and I respect my character, which I had waited a long time to do that. I just did it a couple days ago, and I wish I would have waited just a little bit longer because I got some new gear that caused me not to need as much endurance. So I could have put those endurance points into intellect, but I had to put 7 points into dexterity, which I absolutely hated to do that, but I had to do it to equip that Jester hat properly. You have to have 14 dex to use that Jester hat, which you can buy that one from a merchant. And the reason why that particular piece of gear is so important is that it has the special effect of raising the chance of item discovery. Now, if I wasn't interested in playing through any more of the game and I just wanted to focus on PvP, then I would not have touched my dex and I would have just leveled my intellects more. I do have a ring that also raises item discovery as well, but that hat, that Jester hat, is a decent defensive piece of light gear that I just could not pass up wearing full time while playing through the single player game. It does absolutely nothing for PvP, which is why I swapped to the black hood to increase my casting speed for most of these fights. I like the way the dark armor looked, which is that body piece. It was reasonably light. It had some killer defense for its weight. That's why I decided on that piece for my body. For the hands, I'm using the Lost Center Cuffs that can be purchased from the armor dealer in Majula after beating that specific boss area, which that raises pyro magic damage. And for the feet, I just picked something generic with decent defense and leveled it up to +10, but that piece will definitely get replaced at some point. The most important piece of gear, however, is going to be the Dark Pyro hand weapon, which I leveled it up to +10. That's where the core of where the pyro magic damage is going to come from. When you're in living form, or if you've only died a few times in hollow form, it's not good at all to wear, which is why I keep the regular pyro hand around. If I need to switch to living form for more health or something, then I'll use that. But when I'm fully dead with it leveled to +10, the damage on it is 300 plus 135. So its overall damage is 435, and that's more than enough to one-shot some level 80 players based on what their total health is and what gear they're wearing. Now for my stats, I raised my strength to +12 so that I can equip the magic mace, which I leveled it up to +10. It's very effective, but it's also a slower weapon. It's gotten the job done for me just playing through the regular game, and it's the one weapon that I was the most comfortable with based on having that low of strength and dexterity. I raised my attunement to 25 so that I could have 5 spell slots, which is more than enough for PvP or playing through the single player game with soul arrows. But there's a witch hat that you can get somewhere in the game, and also a ring that will grant you additional spell slots if you have them. So you may not need to raise your attunement up that high. You may be able to just get by with 4 spells and wear a piece of gear if you need a 5th spell. Now if I were only interested in PvP, I wouldn't have leveled the attunement so high, and I probably would wear that witch hat. I also wouldn't have leveled dex, and I also wouldn't have leveled the stat for equipment load so much. I would have just dumped all those points into intellect for base magic damage, but I was more looking at playing through the New Game Plus single player with that build. And if I wanted to change it with the Lord Vessel for PvP and New Game Plus, hopefully I'll be able to do that. I'm not sure if you can get a Lord Vessel in the New Game Plus. I'm thinking that you can though. But I stopped at level 80. I'm definitely not going to level any higher. I probably should have stopped at level 70, but either way, that's going to be my final build. I always play as the mage class with pretty much any RPG that I play, so that's why I chose Sorcerer right out the gate, and so far it's worked out pretty well. I was able to clear most of the game without too much of a headache. I'm able to hold my own in PvP. The bosses haven't been too difficult with this build. I was winning the majority of the matches that I had tonight, and I'd even say I won more than half of the 2v1s where I was at a disadvantage. The two types of characters that I do have issues with, however, are the soul arrow mages, because they can hit me across the room while I'm trying to cast something, and the melee characters with the super long swords or the scythes or the really long weapons. Those can be a little bit of a tricky fight, but for players with smaller weapons, I win most of those fights, especially if I get the jump on them by camouflaging myself as one of those iron stands. You know, I almost root for the person to survive through whatever my initial spell is going to be, but you can just tell with how the player reacts when I jump out and throw Firestorm down. I mean, that kind of rattles people to the point to where they just have to back up and go, you know, reassess the situation. So it's just, to me, it's fun doing that. I laugh about it. It's probably not the right way to play the game, but, you know, it gets the job done. But for my rings, I use the binding ring for limiting how much health I lose while in hollow form, which is pretty much a must if you're going to use the dark pyro hand effectively. I sometimes use the steel protection +1 ring to raise my defense, which I can usually get that into the mid 500s. The +1 ring that lets me cast faster, which makes a huge difference. I never take that ring off ever. You know, playing single player or PvP, that ring stays on. The second dragon ring that raises my health, stamina, and equipment load, that stays on most of the time. And of course I swap around the last ring sometimes depending on what I'm doing. Sometimes I wear the ring that raises my intelligence up by 5. The sun ring is fun to play with, and if I'm playing single player, I'll wear the ring that raises item discovery quite often as well. But there you go, that's my build. That's what I focused on with my character. I did get a few questions in the last video asking where I got a certain ring or a spell or a certain piece of gear, but I blazed through this game so fast, and I really didn't pay attention to what I was picking up, so most of those questions are ones that I just can't answer, unfortunately. Maybe if the partner audits don't make a big impact next month, I could do a walkthrough later this year for this game, but we'll just have to see what happens. It kills me that I couldn't do one because I felt like I could have done a pretty good walkthrough. But anyways, I do have a question for those of you that are playing this game. I'm a little stuck near the very end of the game myself. I can't figure out how to open the castle gate for the big castle that's through the Shrine of Winter. I've tried Googling it. I've looked at walkthroughs here on YouTube. I just haven't gotten anywhere. I've watched a lot of players, they just run up to the door and it opens for them. So I must have missed something at some point in the game. I just don't know what it is. I think I killed all the bosses up to the point. So if you know what it is, drop me a comment. I'd really appreciate it. But that's pretty much all I have. Hope you guys enjoyed the coverage. This is Zero at ReviewZoneHD, and as always, thanks for stopping by.